Every great company, every product you can't live without started with the exact same absolutely terrifying challenge. How in the world do you get those first few users? I mean, it seems impossible, right? You've got no brand, no one's ever heard of you, and you're asking a total stranger to take a big leap of faith. Okay, let's break down how you actually solve that.
But first, let me ask you something, and really think about it for a second. Of all the apps on your phone, all the software you use for work, every single service you pay for how many of them were you a true, day one, first 10 people on the platform user?
Yeah, for almost all of us, the answer is a big, fat 0. And that right there, that reveals the core problem, the first user paradox. Almost nobody wants to be the first customer, and yet, every single successful company somehow found a way. The secret isn't what you think. So here's the first thing you have to get right. It's a huge mindset shift. Your job isn't to persuade everybody. It's not to convince the masses with some brilliant marketing campaign. No. Your job is to conduct a search, a very specific hunt for a tiny handful of people who are already out there looking for you. And this slide breaks down exactly who you're searching for. On one hand, you've got the enthusiast. You know this person. They just love new stuff. They get a real thrill from being an early adopter and finding the next big thing. And on the other hand, you've got the desperate user. This person's hair is literally on fire. Their problem is so painful, so urgent, that they do not care if your logo is ugly or if your website has a few bugs. They will try anything that even hints at a solution.
So the lesson is really simple. You're looking for one of those two people. Think about a developer who's on a crazy deadline and needs to ship an API. They find some tiny, unknown startup that solves their exact billing problem. You think they care how many employees that startup has? No way. They just want their pain to go away. And just like that, they become customer number 1.
Okay, so if getting your first users is a search, how do you actually do it? Well, there's a playbook for this. And I gotta tell you, some of these rules are gonna feel a little weird. They go against almost all the standard business advice you've ever heard. But for this specific mission, they work.
So here they are, the 5 rules of the search. We'll touch on them all, but I really want to zoom in on that first one because it's the one that trips almost everyone up. Charge real money right from the start. And this quote just nails why. Look, the goal here isn't to get rich. Forget about the revenue for a second. The goal is to get a clear signal. It's about getting high-quality feedback. And when someone has to pull out their credit card and actually pay you, their feedback suddenly gets brutally honest and incredibly valuable. For users, well, they just don't have the same skin in the game. And the other rules all follow that same core logic. You do personal outreach instead of buying a billboard because you're looking for a specific person, not a crowd. You launch early, even when it's kind of messy, just to create a surface area for those people to find you. Then you study those first few brave souls like an anthropologist, watching their every move. And you experiment like crazy. At this stage, your biggest enemy isn't a bad review, it's being completely invisible.
Now, all of this leads us to a much bigger, kind of mind-bending idea. For years, the startup world has been obsessed with the MVP, the minimum viable product. But what if that's not quite the right way to think about it? What if just being viable isn't ambitious enough?
Let's try an analogy. I want you to picture your brand new product not as a finished building, but as a tiny, single-celled amoeba at the very bottom of an evolutionary tree. It's super simple, and its only job right now is to survive long enough to evolve into something much more complex.
And this is the classic definition of an MVP we've all heard a million times, right? It's all about building just enough to start learning from your users with the least amount of work. It's a super powerful idea.
But here's the question that changes everything. Viable means it's capable of working. It's about survival. But what if the real goal isn't just to survive in your current form, but to change?
And that brings us to this, the Minimum Evolvable Product, the MEP. This isn't just about survival. It's about being built for adaptation from day one. It's a product created with the explicit understanding that your first users won't just use it. They are going to fundamentally change it. They're going to push it and pull it in directions you never even imagined.
Okay, I know that can sound a little abstract, so let's make it super concrete. Let's look at maybe the perfect real-world example of an MSP in action. Let's talk about Tesla, and specifically about their amoeba.
The original Tesla Roadster. Yeah, sure, the common story is that it was a pricey car meant to fund the future. And that's true, but it was also something else. It was a search algorithm. It was a $150,000 bat signal sent up into the sky, designed to find a very specific tribe of people.
the enthusiasts and desperate users who wanted an electric car, no matter how impractical.
And this is so important. Everything that happened next for Tesla was path-dependent. In other words, the entire future of the company, every car they've made since, was shaped, constrained, and directed by the very specific things those first few Roadster buyers cared about. They literally set the company's DNA.
This table just lays it all out perfectly. Look at the left column. What did those early adopters value? Insane acceleration, cutting-edge technology. And what were they willing to sacrifice? A comfortable ride. Now flash forward to today and look at the right column, at a mass-market car like the Model Y. It's the exact same DNA. It's faster than a Lamborghini, the tech is better than a BMW, but the suspension is rougher than a Toyota's. That is not an accident. That is the evolutionary path set in stone by those very first users.
So this brings us to the most important takeaway of all. Finding your first users isn't just a marketing task you check off a to-do list. You're actively selecting the co-pilots who are going to help you steer the entire future of your company.
And you know what? That should feel incredibly freeing. It should feel like a huge weight has been lifted off your shoulders. It means that what you launched doesn't have to be perfect. In fact, it can't be perfect. It just has to be a starting point. It has to be evolvable.
So, as you think about whatever it is you're building, the real question isn't just, who is my customer? It's a much deeper, much more important question than that. The values, the needs, the desires of your very first users will become your product's permanent DNA. So, who are you going to hand the wheel to?